Hey everyone, Neil here, and I have Henrik, who is a professional footballer with 10 years plus of experience and has been actively investing in dividend stocks to create a passive income source for his family once he retires from football. Henrik also runs a blog called Dividend Athlete where he shares his investment strategies and is growing that brand in itself. This is going to be a really interesting interview where we cover his time with football. We talk about how he got into dividend investing and even sharing some strategies and what he's now doing to grow the Dividend Athlete brand online. So, Henrik, great to have you here. Let's start with a really quick introduction for yourself.
Thanks, Neil, for having me. My name is Henrik. Like Neil said, I'm a professional footballer by profession and have been for a bit over a decade now, playing across different leagues and countries in Europe. And on my investing and online presence side, I've been investing for a while now. Like you said, to sort of have that bit of security when I retire from football, because it's going to happen eventually. And I also document my journey on my website dividendathlete.com, as well as on my Instagram page Dividend Athlete, and just really to sort of share my journey and to share some of my experiences, and so people can possibly be motivated by it or take something away from it. I get value from it, and it's actually helped me a lot as well, as I'm sort of putting your thoughts down on paper. Really helps to sort of make it really clear why I'm doing certain investing strategy or follow a particular plan, as well as, of course, getting to interact with all the people who are also interested in similar things.
Mm-hmm. So, and on that note, and this is really interesting for me because I love digital marketing and growing brands online on one side, and then I don't know if I love this more, maybe the same. I absolutely love football. As you know, I'm a big Manchester United fan, and
I won't hold it against you, Neil.
and so for that, like for those two reasons, I've really been looking forward to this. So let's just, I guess, talk about, I guess we'll introduce this kind of dynamic where you've got, for those that aren't so close to football, when are you planning to retire?
So I'm 29 right now, and so in the end of the season I'll be 30. So the plan is right now to play for roughly 5 more years. Obviously, that depends on staying healthy and so on, and also on my performances and things like that. But it's roughly, I would say 5-6 years time horizon when I'm looking to retire. So, but of course, if I feel good and I'm bringing value to a team, then obviously I'll carry on. So it's sort of a moving target.
Got it. So you've kind of got this world of uncertainty, right, in football, where you may get injured, or you may just not score as many goals, or you're a winger, so you may not take on as many players, or you may not impress, or your crosses just aren't as good anymore. And then you're looking at like dividend investing, which is also another world of uncertainty. So how do you, and I guess for the audience, we'll talk about dividend investing and we'll introduce everyone to that, I guess, a bit later on. But how do you mentally prepare yourself when you're looking at a world of uncertainty? You kind of have to be very strong because it could, every week you're kind of playing for your shirt, and then you're investing as well, which is also not guaranteed. So how do you feel about that? How are you preparing yourself for retiring and then going into something that is slightly also uncertain?
Yeah, it's a great question, I think. And on the football side, it's just sort of one of those businesses when I think the uncertainty is really high, because even if you have a contract somewhere, if things aren't working out, your club's likely to try and move you on, or to try to find some kind of solution to where it's best for everybody. So the contract on its own isn't really that much of a guarantee that you're going to be in one club for the duration of your contract. But of course, there's a ton of uncertainty. But I try not to think about it too much, because it can can be quite, overwhelming, because it's a team sport anyway, so you can only control so much, and sometimes things really go your way, other times it don't, and that's just, you have to be okay with it, because it's a little bit of a long shot anyway to get your foot in the door as a professional. Played with a lot of great players in sort of academy level and so on, who should had the talent but just didn't get that break, and unfortunately didn't make it. So I think, first of all, I'm really grateful to be in this position anyway, and second, just really try to take it one training, one game at a time, and not planning too far ahead. And it's sort of ups and downs all the time. I would say you rarely get those top level guys who are, I don't know, scoring 20, 30 goals every season, and just never seem to have that period when someone's gonna release them off their contract or something. But you just have to be accepted uncertainty and try to do what's in your control to the best of your abilities. But actually, on the investing side, I think since I started investing and thinking about my future financially after football, it's sort of giving me a lot of calm, I could say, because I think something a lot of players talk about, what we're going to do after football. There's always sort of that coaching path that a lot of guys think they will do, but there's, if you compare how many coaches there are to players, there's not going to be spots available for everybody to be a manager. And I think I don't still know 100% what I'm going to be doing after I finish football, but it's great to have sort of that certainty that, I'm taking care of the financial side. So have that bit of optionality, or have that bit of freedom to sit down and really talk it through with my family and see what we're going to do after I finish football. So I think the investing has really actually helped reduce some of the uncertainty. Of course, if you invest in equities, there's risk involved, and that's why you get compensated for it. But again, as much as with football, you just can control your process and can control your plan and have your rules in place, and have to sort of accept that bit of uncertainty. I mean, risk and uncertainty in investing, they're a part of it, but historically speaking, over the long term, the odds are in your favor.
Got it. Yeah. And before I ask you a really serious question, can you give us some names of some big players that you've worked with, you played with, or played against?
So the level I played with, probably it's not going to be a ton of guys who know these names. So I've played together with some guys who've gone on and played in the Premier League after, or played in some players who played in the Spanish top division or Italy, but it's not going to be like household names that everybody knows. But the players I've played against, sort of on international levels. So I played, against some really good players, I think, because with the national team, we played in the same group with England, played in the same group with France, with Italy, with Germany, with Holland. So, all these top players there, which was a great test to play against them. As an offensive player, playing against somebody like Van Dijk, or I remember even played against England, playing against players like Wayne Rooney, Arjen Robben, Ribéry, Benzema, these guys. So these are probably some of the names that people will know. So it's always a really good test to Lewandowski as well. So coming up against these players is always a really good opportunity to really test yourself.
Yeah, and in business, it's there's this constant, running a business is highly uncertain, especially for people who are just taking that step forward, as a first-time entrepreneur. I've been running, my business, as for nearly 4 years, and even now it's things are uncertain. Something could happen tomorrow that we didn't plan for, and actually something did happen a few weeks ago that we didn't plan for, and we just had to get on with it. And at first it was slight panic, and then we figured out a solution, and we're in a better place actually for it. And so whether you're like new or have been around for ages, I guess I'm kind of drawing this parallel to football and investing. There is always this level of uncertainty, and I like what you said about like looking at what's in your control and not looking too far ahead, and setting your expectations. And I think a big part of is mental toughness. And you see, in my world, you see businesses who have been around for years, decades. You see their CEOs or their founders or their COOs, they operate in a very different level. And I think, had what happened to us a few weeks ago happened to me in the first year of business, I probably would have crumbled and then picked myself up. But I think I recovered within about 3 hours the last time this happened. So you talk about what, playing against some of these top players where you have to have a level of mental toughness as well to play against them and just compete. So how have you kind of, in football at the level you're at, how are you ensuring that you have that level of toughness? There's things that are outside of your control, there's things inside of your control, and it's just difficult, right? Where you have to keep moving forward. What do you do? Are there any special like practices or magic voodoo stuff that you do, or techniques, strategies that you're making sure that you're employing, whether that's in your investing side of the business or in playing football, to keep yourself going and keep yourself having that level of strength?
Yeah, great question again. I think it's a lot of the things I've done on the football side when things have been tough have sort of also helped me to help me more on the business side. In football, I think some of the best periods I've had in football where I've had the most success individually and together with the team, they've sort of come, I would say, maybe 6-9 months after a really tough period. And in those tough periods, I've always tried to, let's say I'm not playing a lot, trying to see what I can do in the situation to maybe this with this coach or in this team, it's not really a great fit for either one of us after a manager changes or something like that. And then I've always sort of thought, well, I'm still going to be super professional and do my very best in training, because it's only going to hurt me if I sort of drop my performance when I feel that I'm not being appreciated or something like that. So what I've usually done is that's where I've in those periods, that's where I've probably put in a lot more work individually, even just going out in the park and just practicing some things for half an hour, 45 minutes, or doing more fitness work, because when you're not playing, you have that extra bit of energy, you can train a bit more. So usually these periods when I put in a lot of work individually, maybe with the team it hasn't worked out, and for me either, I haven't played much, then that work I've done there has really helped me. Not immediately, it's not like I'm going to go to the park for 2 weeks and then the coach is like, wow, this guy, I'm going to put him in the team now, because I just, there's a huge difference. Normally it's taken a bit of time where it's paid off, usually, half a season or a full season, when it's after I say, well, I don't know, really practicing my weaker foot, and in the next season or something like that, it's worked out. And similarly on starting this journey, starting my own website and online presence, it's been pretty much the same. I said, well, what can I do in this that's gonna help me? Maybe not in 1 week, but if I put in the work now, daily, what's that gonna look like in 1 year, for example? But I think it's a good example. When I started the Instagram for Dividend Athlete, I started, it didn't really take off in about a month, so I thought I'd delete it, say, I'm just going to focus on another social media or another medium where people are looking to follow that kind of content. But then I thought, well, did I really give myself the best chances? So I thought, I'm going to go back in there, I'm just going to post every day for a year and see what happens, and even though the post, if I look my first post now, they don't look great visually on anything, but just because I kept consistent with it, that really helped. It was really hard to go, let's say, from 0 to 100 followers, but to go from 5,000 followers to 10,000 followers was already a lot easier, because you keep sort of picking up that momentum. So I think it's sort of same with, like, in investing, the compound interest really helps you on the back end. Similar thing with trying to build a following there on Instagram. It's very slow going in the start, but eventually it sort of snowballed, and now I've had the page for about 1.5 years, and we're just at 13,500 followers, I think. So it's really sort of snowballed in the back end, but it never would have happened if I didn't commit to saying, well, I'm gonna do it every day for a while and see what happens.
That's impressive. And when we first spoke, you talked about, you know, getting your first professional contract and then buying the Rolex. We should, in fact, I should have asked you to wear the Rolex for today, but assuming you still have it, unless you've sold it and then invested those funds, but maybe you can answer that afterwards. When did you first realize that, hey, I could actually take my salary and put it into something that isn't so flashy, but will actually work for me as a source of income for retirement, etc.?
Yeah, so it wasn't really I think my very first contract was in the start. You get sort of like a young player's contract. It's not close to what the senior guys are getting. So, but I think for my first decent contract, when I've been playing the first team for a while and regularly. So, but yeah, I went out and bought a Rolex, I remember, and it cost me like my whole month's wages when I bought it, and it's crazy to think about it now. But I hardly ever wear it now, so that's why it's so strange that at the time, I thought, wow, I'm a first team player now, so I want to like have something that shows that I belong here. But if I think about it now, it's silly, and but that was sort of like the thought process behind it. But I think I was sort of in my mid 20s or so when I started to think, well, okay, it's great, you know. At a young age already as a footballer, you make sort of all your career earnings are compressed into this small window. But whereas normally in a normal job, you sort of build up to this senior position where you start making the most of your money, and you also have that longer career. So I thought, well, what I'm gonna do to make sure I still have some income when I retire, you know, because most footballers, you know, I have quite a few followers from the United States where the sports are different. You come through the college system and you get sort of education before you turn pro for most players. But in Europe, you don't really get that. So let's say I finished at 35, a European player, no education, no higher education in most cases, and also no real sort of work experience in the real world. You know, if I'm gonna go and knock on somebody's door and say, hey, it is my CV, you know, played football for 15 years, and I'm 35 now, so it's not gonna be that impressive, you know. It's not much other skills that I have that I can bring. Of course, you can learn things and so on, but just from a financial side, I thought, what's going to give me that bit of security, so I'm not going to be worrying about it for the next 10 years. So I looked at different sort of investing styles, different methods, you know, different sort of historical data, and I really came to the conclusion that dividend investing is what is best suited for me, and in my opinion, other athletes as well, you know, because you get it's historically, you know, more dividends are much more resilient than the actual stock prices. So the stock prices might get this huge volatility like we had this year, but you know, if you look at the dividends, they have much less volatility. You know, they're much more resilient because they are, whether you have the stock prices, they are sort of depending on the opinion of, like, the collective opinion of what people are willing to pay for any security at a time. With dividends, it's sort of just a part of the profits that gets paid out to shareholders. So that's sort of like a real cash return, not based on what someone else is willing to pay for your stocks. And so when I looked at it, it made a ton of sense to me, and I started to look more into it, and you know, read different blogs, different books, you know, and just sort of ordered any book I could get on the subject and really educating myself on it. And but I think the actual step of putting your money to work somewhere was really important, because you can sort of try to get all this knowledge that you want, but if you actually don't go out and start putting your real hard-earned money to work, you won't. It's also a different thing emotionally, you know. You have to handle these drawdowns and so on. So I think the experience has been probably the best education. Not that I'm saying somebody just start investing and learn the hard way, but actually going out and putting the money to work, it felt like such a big step, you know. In the first, I put this money there, and I was watching it all the time, like what's it doing? But like your first, obviously, doesn't really matter what it does in the short run. It's rather like how consistent you stay with it and so on. But yeah, and as I saw it sort of was so convinced that it's the right way to go. Also wanted to share my journey and maybe make other athletes think about it as well. And that's when I started with the Instagram, when I started with my own website. And actually the feedback's been really, really incredible to see that other athletes, not only footballers, a lot of them are thinking the same way and have the same sort of problem that I had at the time, and they are looking to secure their finances for retirement.
Do you have athletes in your team or outside of the team going, here, Henrik, here's 50,000 euros. Can you go put it into something for me?
Yeah, so that's I like to help out other guys a lot. In the team we speak about it sometimes, but whether I play right now, it's never really gone out further from the initial interest. The initial interest usually tends to be, wow, this sounds great, but then it's like, yeah, but you should really take it easy and educate yourself and set out a plan and follow the plan for 10 years. And there's like, well, follow a plan for 10 years, it doesn't sound like as exciting as you see in, I don't know, films or something where this guy just takes huge risk on something and achieves a very high return. So it's sort of, it sounds so
quick solution, hey?
Yeah, like that. Oh, Henrik, just tell me like a stock ticker. What should I put my money in that it's gonna be double next year?
Right.
If I knew that, I would be wanted on Wall Street by everybody. So it's not how it works. So, but other athletes, I speak with them quite a lot. Just sort of what I try to do is sort of try to ask as many questions myself when we start to talk about, if they ask me what I'm doing, I can show them what I'm doing. Hey, this is my plan, this is the ratios that I use to analyze a company by, and so on and so forth. But I think the most important thing is to ask and see what the other person really is, where they are, with the plan, what is it actually that you're trying to achieve? How much risk are you willing to take? What's your time horizon and all those things. So it's, I think the biggest challenge when I'm speaking to other athletes is how, to sort of channel that initial enthusiasm and sort of keep it going where it develops into sort of a long-term plan. But it's been really interesting to speak, really with many athletes who are, a lot of them are getting interested in investing and putting money to work towards the future as well.
And for those that aren't familiar with the term, dividend investing, the way I like to think about it, and Henrik, correct me if I'm wrong or this is the wrong analogy, but you can invest in properties. That's almost like the easiest investment to think about. And then there's properties that are in great areas that will always rent, and because they're next to a station or they're in the city center or they're next to a school, and they will rent every day of the week. So you could buy that, you can rent it out, and that rental is just almost guaranteed, right? And it's steady, there's history there. And so I like to think of that rental as dividend investing, buying property with the idea that whether it goes up or down, ideally it doesn't go down, but whether it goes up, it's not a massive problem. The main focus is really getting the rental, the cash flow, and paying yourself. And then steadily over time it goes up. Whereas I guess non-dividend investing, where you're investing in stocks and shares, where you're really looking at a company, the fundamentals of a company, the way that company's kind of grown over the last few years, and you're really banking on the result that one day that company is going to go from here to there. Similar to buying a house where you think, that area is going to do really well for that house, and that there's a new subway that's going to open up, and there's the city centers doing more work, and so that property is going to grow in value quite fast. That's kind of how I differentiate the two. Would you agree with that as an analogy?
Yeah, I think that's a very good analogy. And if you would sort of with the rent being the cash flow, the dividend, and the house price itself being the sort of value of the stock at a time. So
yeah,
I think it just also depends on everybody's sort of their own goals and so on. But dividend investing for me, it makes sense not only on the numbers, but also it's the easiest strategy for me to stick to, and in the end, as with any strategy, it's only good if you manage to stick to it in all market conditions. So if I focus on dividend investing, so I focus on sort of the cash flow, like you said. So if I buy a stock that represents a small ownership stake in the company, and I like to invest in companies that generate a lot of cash flow, and they share that cash flow with all investors. So doesn't matter if you own 50% of the company, or you own 1% of the company, or you own like 0.0000001% of the company, like most individual investors do, you're still going to get your share of the profits. So I think it helps to also remove some of that uncertainty that we talked about, because with dividend investing, dividends are paid out of the profits that the company generates. So if I look, well, here's a company who's managed to be profitable for, let's say, 25 years, and it's paid a dividend for 25 years, and the dividend has been growing for 25 years. Well, that shows to me that this is not somebody's opinion, or this is not the CEO saying great things about the company on the earnings call. This is actual profits and actual cash being paid out to me, the investor, from those profits. So I think it just makes a lot of sense to me, where I'm looking at it from like an owner's perspective. If there was like a corner shop and it was generating £100,000 every year, and then you think, well, I'm gonna buy that corner shop and I'm gonna get that income from it all the time. But if you say investing, the first thing that people probably think is, well, I'm gonna give a little bit of money to a founder very early on, and then it's either gonna be 1,000 times a return on my money, or it's gonna go broke, just go bust completely, and you're gonna lose your investment. So that's more speculating, and it's not really for me. So dividend investing really helps me to focus on the actual company, how the company is doing, rather than see, well, the stock price is here, now it's there, now it's here, and you're always sort of hoping, well, I bought my stock here, so I'm really hoping that somebody will be willing to pay this price for it sometime later in the future. So it's sort of have to get those two decisions right, when to buy and when to sell, and that's really hard to do for professionals, like we see from the returns of all these hedge funds lately. So it's with dividend investing, I buy ownership in a company where I feel like I'm getting a good deal, and I'm gonna just get a slice of the profits in the future, and hopefully these dividends will grow in the future. So it helps me take some of that uncertainty off the table and really focus, so I feel like a part owner in those businesses.
And before we switch, I guess, our conversation to how you're building the Dividend Athlete brand online and the blog, just take me through your kind of top level factors to consider when you're dividend investing, or when you're picking a stock to invest in.
Yeah, great question. I think where a lot of people go wrong is the first thing they look at, well, what's the dividend yield? So the yield is sort of how much money you're getting in dividends compared to what you paid for the stock price. And usually the very highest dividends, if you look at dividends of 15-20%, usually these are very sort of risky deals, because the dividend might not be sustainable. So dividend is not a guarantee. It's the board of directors has to approve this dividend every quarter. So and if the business is struggling, they're not going to have any profits to pay dividends out of. So what I look for is a company who's, first of all, profitable. So it means they're actually making profits from their business. They have to pay a dividend, of course. They have to have a history of paying a dividend, and they have to have, so that dividend must be safe, and the balance sheet must be strong. So really those 5 things I'm looking at. So if you look at dividend yield on its own, it doesn't really tell us that much about the business. Dividend yield is just the current dividend in comparison to the share price. And as the share price moves with the sort of sentiment of the market, dividend yield on its own doesn't really tell us much. But if you look at the business, if the business has been profitable, generating growing profits over a long time period, through recessions, through all sort of difficult times now, even, during this pandemic, a lot of companies still generating strong profits and paying dividends, it gives me that bit of security if I know that, well, the business itself is doing well. They have been doing well through those many crises. They've paid a dividend, so it's a priority for them. And the balance sheet is strong, which means they haven't taken on too much debt to run their business. So if I look at those things and I see that it all checks out for me, then I sort of dig further into the business. Ideally, I think the important thing to do is just to read the earnings reports from the companies, yearly and quarterly ones, and listen to the analyst calls as well, where you get a lot of good info. But it can be time consuming, but I think for anyone who wants to invest in individual stocks, so invest actively, I think it's worth to put that time in.
How are you managing your productivity, Henrik? You've got football, on one side of the coin. You've got to keep up with your fitness. You've got a new dog, as I understand it. You've got food, nutrition. Then you've got the matches. You've got changing schedules, and then you've got your passion around dividend investing. And that. So how do you manage all?
Well, I think as a football, you actually have a lot of time on your hands, to be honest, because there's only so much, especially in the season when you have games as well. There's only so much that you can train in one day without really overdoing it. So you have your team training. It's usually spend a couple hours at the stadium, and then your individual work, whether it's technical or physical, it might take you another couple hours. But if you look at it, it's normally if you start, let's say 9 o'clock, you're done by 1-2 o'clock, so right. Max. So you have so much time on your hands, and normally if somebody goes home and plays PlayStation for 5 hours, nobody bats an eye or asks, oh, is this not taking your focus away from football? But sometimes it can be some sort of question that, well, you have this other thing going on, can you still focus on football? So there's so much free time. So I think it's nice because it can be a high pressure job. I think the investing and the online sort of business side really helps to take my mind off it at times, and which really helps. I can go in next day to training or to a game without thinking about a bad game I had or even, I just try to stay productive with it instead. But I think just now starting out on the investing side, it's easy to, and on the training and everything side, because I've been playing for so long and been a professional for so long that, you have your sort of routines with the individual training you make, and you have your own routine or a set plan with the nutrition and everything. And, getting your rest, it's not really so much an issue, it's sort of pretty much automatic at this point, but you still have so much free time. And like you mentioned that we got a dog now, he's 9 months old, a Shiba, and I love to go to walks with him as well. And it's sort of another great way to sort of switch off and relax. But on the business side, I think this is probably the most the challenging thing there is, to really like section your time off, because on one side, I'm investing myself, so I have to do the research, obviously, those companies, it's going to take me probably a couple hours each day, which is quite a lot of time. And then I have to put my thoughts to words, to writing articles, write blog posts and so on. That takes another bit of time, write the newsletter and so on. Sometimes we even do some webinars. And but the third part is probably the most challenging, is the whole sort of setup around it in the start, starting putting up your own website and sort of managing that website and managing all what happens in the back end. That I think that's probably the most not to say frustrating, but the most challenging part for me. How am I getting everything done there as efficiently as I can, so I can focus on the parts that I like better. So as I'm just starting out, it's sort of doing everything myself. And this is probably one area where in the future, if I want to do this more, put more time and focus into it, that probably be a good section where you could have somebody else help in and deal with some of that, especially if you look at things like what we talked about as well, your area of expertise, digital marketing, search engine optimization and things like that. As you know, this can be a full-time job, if you're doing this for your blog, for example. So this is I think this is the area where I find most challenging.
Yeah, we hear this a lot actually. We're as I told you earlier, we're actually in the middle of launching a publishing and copy editing service to take away some of the admin nightmare or just some of the stuff that people don't enjoy, which is mostly around the things you mentioned, maybe doing the research or putting together the article or publishing it or making sure it's edited and it looks great. So it is something that, you know, we hear a lot of the times, and it's pushed us to go and try and solve it. And to be honest, I'm one of these people, I'm quite controlling with my own content. So up until now, I mean, even now, I manage everything in terms of my own content on my own personal blog. And just now, which is, I don't know, 5 years after I've had that blog up and running, I'm now starting to go, I think I need some help with this, because I think I'm going to be more productive. So hopefully in the new year, I'm going to get some help with that as well. So look, we're on the topic of on the blog, which is a nice segue. I like the way you did that. Why did you start a blog in the first place? You know, you've got football. For me, when I heard a professional footballer who's played in the Champions League against all these players, invests, that in itself blew my mind, and I was like, wow, that's a really interesting story. I'd like to get to know that. But then to add to it that writes his own blog content and has his own blog, that I think is quite unique. So why did you start a blog in the first place? What was the real driver behind it?
So I think it was really two things. You know, firstly, it's like I said, it's great to, whenever I invest in something, a company, it's always good to write out my thesis, why I'm investing in this company, what's the long-term future look like for this company in my eyes. You know, what's the financial, what's the fundamentals that I think are gonna support a growing dividend for years and decades to come, hopefully. So firstly, writing all that down in itself, you know, I thought, well, I might as well put that up somewhere so other people can see it as well. And that's on the investing side, which helps me and hopefully others as well to see my thought process. But secondly, you know, because it's something that I've had a lot of conversation with other athletes about, but there's not really so much information on. I thought, well, I'm going to share my experiences just to see if I can get somebody even to think about investing, or to get another athlete to start think about their financial future, and sort of try to lead by example. And as you know, investing is for everybody, not only for athletes. It's from my own personal side that I understand maybe other athletes, their mindset and their situation better, but actually it's, you know, for everyone who is interested in dividend investing and maybe wants to retire early as well, or has a successful business going, or has a good career, and maybe wants to also create that bit of certainty around their own financial future. So I think just sharing my own story and being very transparent with it, the feedback has been really good. You know, when I speak with other players or just other people in general who want to invest, to sort of have that bit of security for the future. You know, it's not always for, well, I want to invest for 10 years because I want to retire and I hate my job or something like that. A lot of people also, they just want to have that another source of income, you know, that they can fall back on. You know, if you look at the year that we've had so far, you know, if you just rely on that, rely on your employer to pay you, and that's your only income, you know, you're always actually, you're one step away from having no income at all, and having to dip into your savings. So it's not a great place to be. So I think that also resonated with people outside of football, which was great to see.
Yeah, and what really resonates with me really well is when you said you blog to get your thoughts on paper and think through, and it helps clarify your thoughts. And it's funny, I don't think I've ever really spoken about this, but it's actually one of the main reasons why I blog as well. So, you know, earlier, I think last year, I wanted to do some research on the future of SEO, and I wanted to just analyze what's happened before, and then where is search engine optimization going forward. And I started with that question. I said I wanted to know what does the future look like, so that I can advise the team, and I can go, hey team, this is where it's going. This is what you need to consider. This is what you need to learn. And so I started on this mission, not even thinking about the blog, just thinking from a team perspective, I need to give them something. I need to give them some guidance. So I need to do my own research. And then I realized I was going down multiple rabbit holes. I was making notes. I was doing my own research, but it never felt tangible. And it just felt very slow. And to be honest, it almost felt very boring as well. But the minute I changed that question to, I'm going to write about this and I'm going to blog about this, because then I can share my blog with my team, it almost became very clear for me. And I just began to clarify my thoughts in this blog post, and I published it on my site, I think last year. And it's called The Future of SEO, 2019, something along those lines. And it's about 4,000 words or 3,000. And it took a heck of a long time to do. And at the end of it, I just felt so clear on what it is we're doing, on the future of SEO. And actually every conversation I had with future clients or prospect clients who were interested in us running SEO for them or helping them with search engine optimization, I was easily able to share that with them. So number one, it helped clarify my own thoughts, and I became clear on like the direction and the priority of SEO. Number two, I used it to share with the team so they can learn with it. And number three, most importantly for every business, I actually shared it with future prospect customers who were qualified customers. I knew they were ready to buy that service, and I'm sharing it with a handful of people by email, not volume, not trying to put it into forums or get it ranking, just very simply hand holding, emailing it across and going, have a read of this. And then most of the times that conversation came back pretty well, and it was like, wow, I've learned so much. Now let's talk about working together. So I think all of those three things can go together, but the power of clarifying your thoughts, it's something I've only realized by accident over the last 3 to 4 years. Prior to this, me in investment banking, it wasn't top of mind to go, oh, I've got this challenge, let me blog about it. But running a business, it's a way out, especially for founders and entrepreneurs and small businesses that are solo founders, where you don't have someone else to brainstorm with or talk about and discuss a problem with. Blog about it, get it, talk about it with paper and write about it, and then you'll start to copy and paste different sections so they make more sense, or you'll take less important things out of that. So I really love that point that you made there.
Yeah, for sure, and I agree with what you said. It's if you actually if I think about investing, or if I'm having a conversation or trying to explain it to somebody, it's sort of that other side of maybe teaching or mentoring other people, or trying to make them see your point of view. It's once you put things down on paper and to really clarify it and try to make it as easily explained as possible, it also makes my own thought process that much clearer. If I speak with somebody and I feel like, oh, I'm having to use a lot of this investing sort of jargon or something, then that means, do I really understand it as clearly if I cannot explain it very simply in a written form? So that's I think once I put that really down on paper, as if I have, for example, an article which Dividend Growth Investing Explained or something like this is the title, and I think it's 2,000 words or something like this, where I've really just put it down, and I can use this article all the time. People ask to me, well, what's why aren't you investing in this or that company? I'm like, well, this is my Dividend Growth Investing article. See, there's the pros, there's the cons, there's the thought process behind it, and it also, from one side, makes it that much clearer for me, and also helps me to get that message across that much better if I have it really sort of written down, and like you said, in different segments, where it goes from this sort of explaining in general into a little bit more detail without making it too complicated with all the jargon and so on. So I think that's a really great point.
And here's another reason, actually. Just 1 hour before this interview, I had a prospect customer who we've been speaking to. She emailed me and she said, and they're a pretty large company. They've grown really fast. They're 150 employees plus, so fairly sizable. And she said, she's interested in working with us for content and search engine optimization. But she said, before we look at that, what we need is a really quick answer on this problem, and it's very specific around search engine optimization, and I'm not going to bore the audience with it at this stage. But her email came across, and what's interesting is she thinks it's a yes or no answer, or she's given us a few choices, whether that's right or wrong, and she's expecting a yes or no answer. And obviously, if it's easy, we can give a yes or no answer. But in this very specific scenario, it's a lot more complicated than she actually thinks. And so trying to get her answer actually is going to take some time, consideration, analysis, blah, blah, blah. And so the idea I actually had was, if I responded with, thanks for the email, it's been great speaking with you, and however, the problem here and the question you have is actually going to take me a few days or half a day just to do the analysis and come back to you, I think that's not going to come out, it's not going to come back as a positive. For whatever reason, depending on how I frame that response, it's just not really going to come back, with a positive light, right? She's going to think, Neil's just not trying to give me the answer here. He's just trying to get away with it, or he wants me to he wants to send him an invoice before he gives the answer. And so I thought, why don't I just blog about this? Why don't I just write a 1,000 word post on the things you need to consider in order to answer this question? And obviously not answer the question because it's too specific, and it's, but just keeping it generic and giving them all the considerations, a bit like you, how you're talking about the factors that you need to consider, and then send that back to her, because now I've solved her problem, and now I'm not going to look like a dick if I send that back to her, right? Whereas I think I would have looked like a dick if I just sent the email. And then number two, most important, is actually everyone else who has that same problem can go through that and read it themselves.
Yeah, that's really, I think the last part is really fantastic, because if you put it out there in a blog post, if one person or one business has that problem, it's unlikely that nobody else has that problem or isn't in a similar situation. So you can actually bring a lot of value to many people, many businesses, just from that work that you did the one time, which is, I think, really, really cool.
Yeah. And okay, so we talked about your Instagram, what you've done to grow that. We'll put the links to the show notes below this video, but you talk about posting every day now, and you've grown to 13,500, and that's really impressive. And I like the consistency in the branding and the feel. You know what to expect, right? And I know, hey, maybe after this interview you're going to do more videos. I think you should do more videos because you come across well, and I think you've got a lot of knowledge to share. But I know there are reasons you are not doing videos. What's been working for your blog specifically to grow that audience? Outside of the clarifying and having the blog help you, which is like number one benefit. How are you growing the reach of that blog so it can help as many people as possible?
So like you mentioned, the Instagram is probably where I get the most of my followers. Just I don't know if it's just visually easier for people to understand the concepts around investing. So that's where I usually get most of my followers, and then I try to, or I direct them to my blog for sort of the more long form articles, that they can, if they're interested in learning more about it, they can read, my own story, how I came to investing and why I'm investing in dividend and so on. Plus, they can get to see my thought process. And I also I give people, once they're on my website, they have the option to sign up for the newsletter, which is totally free and always will be. But with the people who signed up for the newsletter, which is quite a lot. I think it's around 1,000 by now. So it's great to have so many people interested in that, and that's where I we do some webinars as well. You know, I talk in more detail, and I feel like I can answer the questions that people have, and also helps me to understand what are the sort of the main issues people are having when they're starting to invest for themselves or starting to pick stocks for themselves. So that's really, really good to see. But one issue I would like to say is that although, you know, I get a lot of followers on Instagram and direct them to my blog, and quite a lot of them convert to the newsletter. So it's great to have that traffic to the website and to the newsletter, and I'm trying to go into more detail and help them out even more on the newsletter, those are interested. But one issues I'm having is when we talked a lot about SEO and digital marketing before, is there's barely any people who just stumble upon my website when they're looking for something related to investing or dividend growth investing. So it's really sort of difficult to rank anywhere near the top on Google, for example. I know these are very competitive keywords when you talk about investing and so on, but still and this is obviously where you have tons of experience and they're working at a very high level. So I was wanting to ask you a couple of questions, like for someone who's starting out and not having so much time to put on one.
I'm looking at your Instagram while you speak. Carry on.
Like what's something that somebody who's having to wear a lot of different hats, so to speak, with the online business, what's some of the first things or main things in digital marketing and SEO that somebody can do to try to compete sort of on Google, for example, or try to get more organic traffic to their website?
So the reason why I wanted to look at your Instagram is because I just wanted to see where you're sending people. So you've got a huge following. You can obviously do the swipe up now. Mm-hmm. And, you know, if you're looking to grow your email list, then I would be more tempted to send that traffic and the people who view your profile to a download, you know, to your email opt-in, to your lead magnets.
So that's actually, I'm just going to say that real quick. It's something that I do. So I have in the opt-in, and we have sort of my checklist that I personally use for investing. So it's like a 13 ratio checklist, right, where you can print it out or just have it in front of you when you're researching. Does everything check out on my personal checklist? So that's something that I offer to people, that there's a sort of a way to get them interested in the newsletter. And also if you get to the website, there's a pop-up that says what you're going to get with the newsletter. So you get also the invites to the webinars, which are free as well, and so on.
You don't link to it in the profile though?
No, that's usually because when I do a post, I say sort of, I leave the link in the bio to wherever I'm wanting to link to from the post. So I don't link it directly from the Instagram. Is that something that you think it should be more of a priority?
Yeah, have a look at your analytics. Just see what your profile visitors are like. I'm sure you've got some decent numbers, and then just test it. Change the link to a landing page. You should also in the link mention DM to join the Dividend Investing newsletter. Okay, so you asked for a DM. That's interesting. Mm-hmm. Do you actually get DMs?
I do get it. So that's sort of, I thought that initially there wasn't when I used the swipe up feature. I say these are my 13 checklists, 13 ratio checklist. So swipe up and you get the checklist. So that leads to the landing page where you can sign up and you get the checklist. But that's sort of that's one way. But now, because I can only obviously have one link there, so I'm thinking, well, should I have it be straight to the newsletter, or should I just try to just leave that just, you know, exclusively for the newsletter and only use the swipe up to have people go to blog posts? Would that be a better way of doing it?
I would. I always prioritize owning traffic as opposed to like just getting traffic as a one-off. So I would prefer to put a download checklist, you know, link in there, and then the comment above should just be, you know, click on the link below to download the X, Y, and Z checklist, and then put the fingers down below, or enticing. Just see over the next month how many subscribers you get, and you can see from your your email marketing software, what your analytics does, whether it goes up, slightly up, or how it changes. So it's strange, yeah, because we're actually working on a separate site. We had this same conversation of the team wanted to send each visitor from the profile to the latest blog post, whereas my view was, actually, I don't want a reader. I'd rather actually have a subscriber, because then you could just push content to that person every single day of the week whenever you've published content. So I would change that. And then going back to your question, change it, test it, see what works, and then you can change it back if it doesn't work. But going back to your question around like growing the blog, growing the search audience is what I call it, where you're optimizing your site for SEO. And that makes it sound really technical, right? It makes it sound as if you're doing something super technical, whereas SEO optimization and doing SEO is actually just about creating good content Google wants, people are searching for, and you create it in a way that Google appreciates and people appreciate. So it's creating remarkable content that is worthy of being found on page one. That for me is SEO. Now, in order to do SEO, you have to do technical optimization. And that is actually where it gets technical. However, for a blog, it's not as technical as one would think, because we work on e-commerce sites, large websites. When it comes to a blog, it's fairly straightforward in the range of complexity. It's down there. So you do need to optimize your site technically. So that might be making sure that you don't have junk pages. It's basically trying to get Google to find your site as quickly as possible. And if you're building your site on the back of WordPress, then chances are your site's not going to go too bad, from a technical point of view. And then I would recommend, I don't know if you've got this set up, just getting set up with Google Console. So Google Console, getting that plugged into your website, it's the equivalent of Google Analytics, but it helps to measure keyword rankings. And so
I have that set up, but just to maybe direct you in more detail, I have it set up, but the tricky part is, what's the sort of research that I'm doing here that's going to help me with those things? So that can sort of seem very overwhelming, or where do I sort of even start kind of feel.
Got it. So Console's great, and because when it comes to research, there are new research you can do, and I'll talk to you about that in a second, but just logging into Google Console, looking at the performance data for your website, and just simply looking at where you're ranking and what keywords you're ranking, that in itself can make all the difference. So if you're not doing that, then you should start there, because that will help dictate what content is doing well, what content needs sprucing up, what content needs adding, what keywords are great. Maybe you've got keywords like, as an example, as an example, investing for retirement. Maybe you've got a keyword like that, and you're on page 3. So rather than looking for new keywords and rather than doing new research, Google already thinks you're good enough to be on page 3. So why not actually just bump that one up to page 1? So that's when we start to look at priorities and what to work on. I always start with, the low-hanging fruit, essentially. Where's your quick wins? And Google Console is amazing just to do that, because A, it's a free tool, it's by Google, so it's accurate, and it's fairly straightforward. Like if you know investing, Google Console is easy.
Yeah.
And for those listening in, I would recommend you set up there, because it just gives you so much data. Now, in terms of SEO, there's 2 aspects of it, and I know, or that there's 2 kind of fundamental areas that someone like you should be thinking about. And I know you've been doing a great job with the forums out there.
Seeking Alpha.
Seeking Alpha, yeah. And that's a community where people are looking for investment advice, and so you blog on there and you share content on there, and then they click through to your website. That's a great way of getting really highly relevant traffic. Now, what you want to do in that instance is make sure that your content that you publish on the forum and your content that you publish on the blog is different. Yeah, your blog should always be unique. That's my goal. And then whatever I share on forums is a subset of that, or is a different angle, or you're just not publishing it in two places. You're just publishing in the forum and that's it. Or you're publishing a blog in the forum and then you're leading them to your checklist. So that's one way of getting traffic, and it's also one way of getting good links to your website. And if you think about, have you heard of the term link building?
Yes, but I'm not entirely sure what it actually is. That seems a technical thing for me.
Okay, so link building is really simple. It's basically the concept is essentially no different than the concept of a person referring you to someone else, you know? So for instance, if I was, you know, I do run SEO. And so if you met a company who were looking for SEO and you referred me, that person that you introduced me to is going to trust me a lot more because you've referred me. Yeah.
Oh, I got it.
So Google, in the same vein, Google's business is built on the idea that it gives the best search results to its audience, to its searchers. And so it's crucial for Google that it chooses and selects the right websites that it wants to rank. Yeah. And because if it doesn't, then everyone's going to start going to Bing or, you know, some other search engine. Yeah. And so what Google does is it goes, Dividend Athlete has created a piece of content around investing for retirement, and this person's searching for investing for retirement, but not enough people talk about Dividend Athlete. Not enough companies and websites link to Dividend Athlete. So forum links are good. You know, you're getting links from there, you're referring them, but actually getting, say, other known, and the higher known they are, like, you know, BBC or Forbes or Reuters. Like if you got a link from Reuters in your space, you would be, you know, extremely happy. Or Financial Times, you know, those type of sites. The more sites you get to link to you, the higher and the quicker Google is going to trust you.
All right, got it. That's actually giving me a lot to think about there. In that sense, you sort of made that very clear. I really like the way you explained that. Just for that. And yeah. I think it's you know, for me, my experience is, you know, obviously I want to put out as much content as possible. I don't want to sort of dilute that too much with sort of your things. I see a lot, sort of like, I don't know, 5 best stocks of all time or something. And that's just sort of very clickbaity or something, where you just I want people to come here and then I'm gonna give them these 5 stocks, but then you in a couple of months you have to give them another 5 stocks, and I see a lot of websites do that. And I think what I ideally see my blog as well, I would like to have more long form content, but really explaining out what I do, and sort of from there, from this sort of explanatory post, sort of link it to these other sort of, because you can talk about one segment a lot. For example, I have the dividend, the growth, the investing explainer. From there I go, well, dividend safety, how safe are your dividends? Then you go sort of how to analyze the dividends, and then you'd go to different areas instead of being sort of being all sort of this just very easy to consume content that somebody's gonna skim to and see what are the companies that I'm mentioning there, and then you're just gonna leave the page. Rather, I would have that as that's really going to give them a lot of information when they come to my page. And if sort of I don't know if you have that experience, sometimes I say I'm interested in something like, I don't know, I like, let's say, archery, and you're going to go on an archery page, and from there you're going to see, whoa, they wrote this great post about archery here. They've written about, I don't know, the history of archery over there. And then you're going to go from there one blog post to another one of the blog posts, and then you spend like a good 10 minutes on somebody's website. So that's for me like a great experience when I'm on somebody's website or blog. And this is sort of what I'd like to ideally do more of.
Yeah, and doing that, it kind of there's an aspect of that which I'll cover in a second. But just when we were talking about link building, what you have to separate is there's internal links, is where you're referring to your own content within your website, right? So you've got a piece on, you know, investing for retirement. I keep using this example because I'm looking at it here, but I'm going to scroll down so I can use another example. Requested, actually, let's do this. First, fast growing dividend aristocrat. So you've got, you know, you've got a piece of content on that, and then you refer to receiving dividends from West Coast apartments. I think I read that, which was really interesting. And those are internal links. That's where one piece of content in your website is referring to another's. Yeah, that's good. That from a user experience, that makes a lot of sense. That's good to keep people flowing across the website, and it also helps to keep Google going through your website, as opposed to blocking it at one end and going, there's no more content. It's actually getting Google to crawl the website increases the chances of more pages ranking on page one. The other side of link building is external link building. This is what I was really speaking about when I said getting Google to trust you is all about getting other websites it already trusts to trust you. So there's a number of link building strategies that we employ, but one of the things that should open up your mind now is, what relationships do I have? What other dividend investors do I know who also blog? What investors do I know that blog? What publications do I know that would be interested in me writing for them? You know, what your story is quite unique. So there's a PR angle here as well, where you could do your own digital PR and pitch a story, just like I pitched a story to Business Insider a few weeks ago and they loved it. You could pitch your own story to maybe Business Insider or Forbes or an athlete's type of publication, who then picks up your story, writes about it, or you write about it, or interviews you. And now their audience, or now in Google Analytics, you're just going to get a flood of traffic, which you would see as direct referral traffic or referral traffic. And now they've got a link to your website within that article. And that's a really high valuable external link, because Google already trusts this. And so if it already trusts this, and this is already linking to you, then now it goes, I trust that, this is linking to that, I now trust Dividend Athlete. So that's what link building is all about.
Got it. And I think from my experience, I think the external links that I'm getting are from where I think my website is on, like, for example, other people's like blog roll. They have like a separate page in their blog when they say there's like 20 blogs there that you should also follow, but it's not sort of very, very relevant. I think it's very unlikely that somebody's going to go here, here's these 20 blogs, I'm going to click on each and every one of them because somebody follows them. So I think there is a couple of, I think, links that have that sort of somebody's talking about a company that I've written about, they also link to my article, but I've never actually put it in work, like you said, that I reach out to somebody and say, hey, listen, this is what I do, this is my story, and maybe I could do like a guest post, or maybe I could be featured or write a story for you. So I think that's actually a really, really cool idea that I should put some work into and see what are the online publications, what are the websites that I could collaborate with on that one.
Yeah, and what you'll find is you'll find your website, as it gets more links, you're going to just start ranking automatically for keywords, whether that's on page 1 or most likely on page 3, 4, 5. But at least when you're ranking on page 3, 4, 5, you can start to work on it and start to nudge up, you know. And we've as a self plug here, we launched our own training program to teach people how to do this. But there's a key module in there which is around keyword research, and I'm sure you do an element of this.
Yeah.
But it's so crucial, is understanding and looking, even if you're not interested in SEO, if you're just interested in building a brand, before I speak to any customer on the phone, I do keyword research because I want to understand what their customers are looking for. And then I jump on that call and I know a lot more about their business than I did, 10 minutes ago, just because I'm looking at what people are searching. And so if you're just looking at keywords and analyzing the keywords people are searching for and the questions they have and what keywords other competitor blogs are ranking for, you can start to put together a really good prioritized plan of content you can create. And so I think I really like your strategy of how you've got, content that is, just looking through it here, is you've got portfolio updates, which are not going to be keyword led, are not going to be SEO reasons. That's really for your audience and for your newsletter, right? And then you've got other content that you talk about, like aristocrat content, which is probably from your own experience or a question someone's asked. And then you could do keyword led content, which is I'm actually targeting search audience here, and I want this piece to rank because I now want to grow my audience. And the minute you do that, it just opens everything up, because you've now got community traffic, you've got search traffic, you're now engaging your email newsletters with good content anyway. And there's a number of benefits just by doing all those things.
It's very, very interesting. I think the part, like you said, that you mentioned keyword research as one big part of it is to determine like which specific keywords would I like to try to rank for. Because if let's say I want to rank somewhere for investing, that's going to be somewhere, I type in investing, there's going to be multi-million corporations that are going to be ranking there for investing.
Yep.
So I'm not going to rank for investing with my website, being realistic. So just trying to find the sort of, let's say, keywords that are very relevant to my content, but maybe a little bit specific, so it's not going to be that competitive, like something like finance or investing or something like that. So how should I go about this process of trying to find which keywords are relevant but not super competitive?
Yeah, so your space is by default, because you're in the investment space, anyone that ranks for your investment keywords, there's a lot of value behind this, right? So generally, the higher the value from one customer who one of these websites picks up as one of their customers, it's in the thousands, hundreds of thousands, sometimes even millions, right? A customer is worth a lot. And so by default, companies will bid a lot if you're looking at paid advertising in Google. And so by default, again, search organic traffic and ranking for those keywords are very difficult, because those companies have invested in SEO. They've probably got large teams doing SEO. They're doing link building like a machine, big corporation. So going for the term investing would not be advisable. But where you can come in is actually trying to go super, super niche, a bit like what you've done with the actual blog and the business, or, you're investing. You've chosen to go niche with your investing. You've gone, I want to focus on dividend investing because this feels right for me. So your topic of dividend investing, if Google was to look at this website, it's not going to say, this website is about football. Whilst football's integrated in there, it's going to see it as an investment site. Then it's going to go, what type of investment? It's not going to really go into properties, whilst there is some property content there. It's going to start picking up things about dividends. So I think you've done a good job around targeting the topic without targeting the topic. It's by default, right? Because you're interested in it, you're blogging about it, it's happening naturally. And that's a really good way of doing SEO and winning the Google game, is just being authentic, not trying to hack Google algorithm, but actually just producing good content. What I would now do to proactively, I guess, grow and win in Google is to go really specific with the keywords. So when you're studying keywords, look for keywords with dividend in them. Look for dividend blogs, dividend investing blogs that are doing fairly well. You can use a tool like similarweb.com, and you can put those blogs in similarweb.com, and it'll give you an estimated traffic, right? And then what you could do is you could pick up search SEO tools out there. You've got Moz, Ahrefs, there's Ubersuggest. You've got a number of SEO kind of keyword tools. Ubersuggest is a free tool, I think, where you can just plug in the website and just look at the keywords it's ranking for. And then you can start to analyze that keyword, and you can physically take that keyword into Google and go, who's ranking for this keyword? Yeah. And then just look at those pages, like, manually look through those pages and see how well their content is. Could you do something better? Do you think their content is outdated? Are the websites fairly small? Are they low competition websites, like, other bloggers just creating content? Is the content really light? So Is it a 200 word blog post or 500 word blog post where actually you could answer the topic even better with a 2,000 to 3,000 word blog post? Whenever I see that, I start to get excited. So it's actually like dividend investing, right? Where you've got your factors and you're looking at the keyword and you're going, who's competing for this? What's happening? Is the content good enough? Could I do a better job? And one of my biggest questions that I ask myself whenever I'm creating content or whenever we're doing it for, for clients is, I guess mostly for myself, is really, am I going to enjoy creating this piece of content? Because I know if I'm not going to enjoy it, then I'm just going to complain the entire journey of writing for a day or 2 days around that topic, and I'm not going to enjoy it. And to be fair, it's not going to come through on the piece of content. So that is a big question for me. I have to be physically interested in it, or there's an end goal to it in terms of like the example I told you earlier. She needs an answer on email. Okay, I'm going to blog about it and then I'm going to share. So there's a real strong justification for doing it. And those are the things I kind of consider before I tackle a keyword.
That's a very good answer, and it's actually given me a lot of things to think about. And I think this is something that I've been sort of putting off a little bit, doing a little bit here and there, a little bit of the keyword research and so on, but never actually putting the time to say, listen, I'm gonna do keyword research here for this amount of time, or to this time period, I'm gonna put some work to it, because I think really, from what you said as well, the benefits really gonna be huge. For me personally, have more, where right now all my traffic is sort of where I have to direct people from one place to another, to have sort of that organic, or sort of like I said, search, people coming from search to find my content would be huge. And I know, starting pretty much small, but to try to have those tools that you mentioned, focusing on the competitors and see what's working, where I can compete well, with the really an interesting challenge, and I'm looking forward to it. But you mentioned the website, I think 2 websites. One was for SimilarWeb, was it?
So similarweb.com.
Yeah.
So that's a good website just to find traffic estimates. You have to take it with a pinch of salt. It could be way under, or it tends to be way under than the site actually gets. And you can see where most of their traffic's coming from. So you can, and then the other tools I mentioned was Ubersuggest. That's I think a free tool. There's Moz to do keyword research. There's Ahrefs, SEMrush. There's so many tools to do keyword research. But if you do a search in Google for, unless you're doing a big amount of volume and you want to look at the competition and really analyze it, then I would go into a paid tool. Obviously, for our clients, we use paid tools. If you're just looking for keyword ideas, and it's funny I do this, even though we use a paid tool, is sometimes I'm looking for keyword ideas, but I'm not hung up on keywords. I'm looking for content ideas that I'm going to enjoy, and I know I can share with people who are going to speak to me and call me, or prospect customers. And those two in itself are a good reason to create the content. And then the third, if it starts to rank in Google, that's a bonus. But if you're going out there going, you know what, I really want to rank for Google, I really want to make it happen, then at that point you just pay for a paid tool. And it's not a huge amount of money. You could find one for $99 a month, and then it starts to give you competition levels. It starts to tell you basically how competitive a keyword is. But I always like to look at a site and like to look at the content of a site. These tools kind of pick up other stats, which we look at, but this is one thing that's overlooked a lot of the times, and it's almost the easiest thing to do. Just search for the keyword in Google, see who ranks, and then how confident do you feel on the back of it?
All right, that's very, very good advice. And I think for me, I will certainly put in the time to see sort of what's, because obviously I read a lot of the websites that produce similar content, not maybe exactly in the same companies that I'm looking at and so on, but I think similar investing styles and so on. So it would be for me to put in that work and see who ranks for what, and then see where I feel I could compete with. I think it's an exciting challenge. I'm looking forward to getting started with that as well.
Yeah, we call that a content gap analysis, where we're looking at competitors in the space, we look at your side and we see the gap and we see the opportunities, and that's where it actually becomes really fun, is where you go, wow, this site hasn't even hasn't made any dent in what's potential and what the opportunities are. When you look at what competitors are doing, it's just a fast forward way to saving yourself a ton of time, because they've already done all the research. Now all you're doing is you're piggybacking on what they've already done and saying, which ones do I want to go for here? So yeah, I'll be monitoring your progress.
Well, very, very cool. I hope you have some things to see there where you feel like you've helped me put on the right path there.
I'm sure I will. So so look, I've really enjoyed this. It's my first interview where actually you've interviewed me partly, and asked me a bunch of questions. So that's, thank you for that. And I hope, just going deep on this subject, we've not lost anyone, but we've helped other bloggers or service providers, e-commerce companies, founders who are looking to grow on organically in SEO and reduce their reliance on paid advertising, or increase, I guess, the channels that you can get traffic on. Before we go, is there any other questions you had just on that?
Not I think anymore. I think you covered it really well, and I just couldn't. I enjoyed this chat again with you greatly, and I think I just couldn't pass up the opportunity to ask you all these questions in the end. So sorry if it dragged on a bit too long, but it's great to sort of get your opinion and get your advice on it, also from your own experience and from the work that you do now. So I think that's for me very helpful, and appreciate it. Great chat as usual.
Yeah, no worries. And look, I've really enjoyed this. Thank you for your time. I'll be following the journey, your SEO journey of growing the brand online. Before we close out, where can people find out more about you?
So people can find me on my website, which is dividendathlete.com, or on Instagram, which is dividend_athlete. And if you want to get an answer for me, the quickest, then probably Instagram is the way to go, because I try to answer each and every question I get on there. And so if people follow there, they can also, I linked all my content, but on my website they can go through my investing journey and see a little bit more about me and the type of investing I do.
Amazing. Thanks again. I hope you win your next game.
Thanks a lot, Neil. Appreciate it.